Hi, my name is Tyler Booth. I am creating this PowerPoint for the hardening recommendations for our operating systems and firewalls via Windows and Ubuntu. All right, so starting with the Windows Servers 2019 operating system, we are going to want to disable the remote desktop protocol access. So pretty much the remote desktop protocol is a protocol that's utilized for distance and minutes to host and computing devices. So pretty much anybody from anywhere can pretty much connect to your computer if you do have this feature on. You can pretty much do whatever they want with it. So it's definitely recommended to have it disabled since a lot of hackers all over the world are pretty much continuously browsing on the internet, just making sure to see if any of this is on anybody's computer. So definitely keep it disabled so we can prevent having an easy way to your machine. All right, so the next recommendation for hardening our Windows operating system is disabling the admin shares. So usually by default, Windows Server automatically creates special hidden and administrative shares that has programs, services like the application software and data processing services that's utilized to conduct the system's network. Pretty much when you disable admin shares, it confirms that anonymous entrance to the share is defective, so it will obstruct any entry to the porthole that's applied to SMB. So it's definitely recommended to have it disabled. Okay, so for our final hardening recommendation for our Windows servers operating system, we do recommend disabling remote interaction with services feature. It's a little bit similar to my previous point with the remote desktop access, but this one's just strictly on the features. So pretty much Microsoft, like they do have features on there such as clipboard redirection and printer redirection for clients that wants to connect to the remote desktop session host. But we definitely recommend adopting the ActiveX control. It's way more secure than using these clipboards and printer reclassification. So definitely recommend disabling the services. Okay, so starting with Ubuntu's operating system hardening recommendations number one, we're going to start with IP spoofing, which is no spoof on. IP spoofing is the establishment of IP arrays with an assembled origin IP address, intent of obscuring in the identification from the dispatcher or copying different data processors. So pretty much if a hacker successfully spoofs a network, they will have entry to, pretty much the target's computer. It will allow them to implement identity and online fraud. So it's definitely recommended to have this feature off on the Ubuntu operating system so you can prevent these fraudulent activities happening to you. Okay, so the next hardening recommendation for our Ubuntu operating system would be to implementing a swap feature. So pretty much a lot of pre-configured Ubuntu computing software are not usually composed with the swap feature. Swaps do permit pretty much your computer to equip with additional memory than the physical memory that's accessible on the memory. We do recommend this because when you do download more security practices, try to implement more stuff, you would like to make sure you do have that space for it. So it's definitely recommended to implement this swap on your device. Okay, so for our last Ubuntu operating system hardening recommendation, we definitely recommend to configure the systemctl.config. So pretty much this feature is utilized for altering the kernel framework at duration. Configuring this feature intercepts the familiar SYN flooding attack, which is, the former denial of services which an attacker initiates a connection to the server without finalizing the connection. So pretty much it forbids cyber criminals from maneuvering, spoofing ambushes to the resistance to the IP address of the host. So it does stop the denial of services. Okay, so next we're going to start with our Windows Server firewall. And first one we have is our inbound connections on block. It's automatically on default. So pretty much the principle of motivation and inflowing firewall regulations are to intercept inbound congestions from the World Wide Web, the internet, and supplementary networks. So pretty much keeping inbound connections on block will prevent cyber attacks such as denial of services and rejected internet connections and malware. So again, usually it's automatically on blocked, but you just want to make sure that it's still there. So just still go and check to make sure that feature is on block. Okay, so for our next Windows Server firewall hardening recommendation, we do recommend creating firewall regulations via Telnet. Telnet is a protocol that's utilized for console simulation. Telnet has a deficiency assistance for encoding, so it's not accustomed to vulnerable connections through unsafe networks. So it positions avoided services to preferably disclose and obstruct harmful traffic. So it's definitely recommended to create this firewall recommendation. So yeah, just make sure to keep your system protected. Okay, so for our final Windows servers firewall configuration hardening recommendation would be to enable Windows Defender with advanced security. Windows Defender is fine, but definitely if you want a more secure network, we definitely advise to download the advanced security feature. But Windows Defender Firewall with Advanced Security is the main segment of a layer preservation model by supplying a hosted, constructed bilateral network traffic clarification for computing appliances. Windows Defender forbids any uncertified network cascading back and forth on your appliance. So yeah, it's definitely recommended to have this on your computer. Okay, so going into Ubuntu's IP table hardening recommendations, we're going to start off with closing ports 22 SSH and port 80, which is HTTP. It's recommended to keep ports 22 and 80 closed due to the vulnerabilities associated with each port. With port 22, pretty much hackers can use brute force SSH certification or utilizing a special key, acquiring the target's computer, or using HTTP 80. Hackers obtain their praise information by applying SQL injections, cross sites, and etc. So it's definitely recommended to keeping these ports closed because these ports are definitely open to the public. So definitely want to keep that closed. Okay, so for our next Ubuntu IP tables hardening recommendation, I do advise dropping invalid packets. Dropping invalid packets that come across your network is not super critical, but it's still better to drop them since cyber criminals are finding more ways to obtain the target's computer and finding ways to mask an IP address as an invalid packet. So it's definitely possible in the future that they may do this. So I definitely recommend still just dropping that invalid packet so you can prevent that from happening. Okay, so for our last hardening recommendation for our Ubuntu IP tables, I definitely recommend blocking out outgoing SMTP mail. Simple mail transfer protocol is used to dispatch and collect electronic mail. So if you don't want your server to send out any departing mail, obstructing that sort of traffic will prevent any unwanted mail from being sent out. So just in case you do have some personal information in your mail and then you don't want like the hackers to possibly have access to it and possibly have it sent out to them, it's really best to have this feature blocked. So definitely have this implemented on your machine. And this is my reference. Thank you.